Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a Swoon Sewing Patterns Glenda. It is a convertible crossbody bag. The strap length can shorten to a shoulder bag, can also go longer to be a crossbody, and then it can be taken off to create a clutch. It's a rather large clutch, but it's super fun, comes together very quickly, minimal hardware, and just all around a fun bag. Lots of uses, can be used as a daily driver for somebody who doesn't carry that much stuff, and it's perfect for a daily diaper bag because it fits diapers and wipes and a change of clothes perfectly. So yeah, all of my changes and modifications for Cork will be in the description box below. Be sure to hit subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what you think, and I hope you enjoy. So I have all of my pieces cut here. I will walk you through them. I have 2 straps, which I will sew together to make into one. I have 2 outer body pieces. I have 2 flap pieces. I'm doing contrasting cork on the inside here. And this is going to be my inside zipper divider pocket. And then the 2 sides, 2 zip tabs, my zipper, all of my hardware. And then I also have my fabric cut out. And I am going to leave it unlined, so it's just fabric. So I have my zipper pocket, my sides, and then 2 main panels, which technically is the lining. Alright, so to get started, first what I'm going to do is my outer, or my main, which will become the outside of my bag. And I am going to install the female portion of my magnetic snap. And I've already gotten that prepped. Using the pattern piece, I laid out where it goes and I cut holes, and so I'm just going to insert this in. And then I'm going to put a square of interfacing here just to hold everything, make sure that with a lot of use that the snap doesn't go anywhere. Around all 4 sides. And then next what I'm going to do is on the other main body panel, I'm going to put my tag. And I'm going to get that sewn down before I do any major construction because it's just a lot easier at this stage. And if you've ever watched any of my other videos, then you know that the glue that I'm using is Beacon Fabri-Tac. It is my go-to for everything. Beacon Adhesives is the company that makes it, so you can just Google that. Alright, so to lay my tag, I'm going to just center it 1.5 inches down and center it in the middle of the smaller. If you've ever made this bag, or whenever you cut it out, you'll see that it tapers at the top of the main body panel. You kind of see it here. And so you're going to attach your tag to the narrower side, so the top. All right, so 90. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I'm gonna leave this here and top stitch that down. Get this out of the way. So for the flap, I have my 2 pieces. And all that I've done is on the original body, or on the original flat piece, it's wider at the top. So what I've done is on my actual pattern piece, let's see. So this top section here, what I did is I cut in a little bit more, probably about 0.75 of an inch. I just tapered it in and kept the original point down here at the bottom. I find that whenever you are top stitching or whenever you're flipping the flap to outside of the bag before you top stitch, it's a little easier because then this bulky section with all the cork isn't all in one area. So yeah, I taper mine in. Feel free to cut as is. And if you do want to taper yours in, I suggest about 0.75, at least 1/2 inch to 0.75 of an inch. It just makes it has a more gradual taper at the top, and I think it looks totally fine. Obviously, it's just my opinion, so do what you want. I've already installed my male magnetic snap using the pattern piece. So now I'm just going to fold these, or lay these right sides together, clip in place, and then I will get this moving. I'm going to prep my inside zipper pocket panel now before I move back to the machine, or before I move to the machine. So to do that, I'm going to burn one short edge of my zip tabs, apply a thin bead of glue on the same edge that I burnt. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to line the tapered top edge, so the smaller edge of the zipper panel. I'm going to lay my zipper next to it with the zipper head on the left side, which is just a personal preference. And then I'm going to line up the opposite edge of my zip tabs to be the same width as my zipper pocket panel. So, if you can see, so I glued my zipper tab pieces so that the outside edge would be the same width as my zipper pocket panel piece. So I'm going to move this little zipper section over to the machine because I'm going to top stitch here down those zip tabs. And then I've got my my side panels, and what I'm going to do is fold them on this little cut section that is on the pattern piece and line up those edges and get this ready for sewing as well. This pattern comes together super duper quick. It's one of the larger style bags that I make that takes the least amount of time. Okay, so now we are ready to do our first round of sewing. So I'll meet you at the machine. All right, so the first piece I'm going to sew is my flap here. So I'm going to start at one edge, go all the way around and back up, and I'm going to leave this top section open. And I'm going to sew using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm trimming down just this section here. You can see it. So just this little section here to help alleviate some of the bulk when I flip this. And I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Flip this right side out and then top stitch. So if you grab it, you can like roll your seam out and then finger press. That's what I like to do. Clip it so it doesn't puff back out. And then I always have my little corners here. I always make them do that, whatever that is, go on an angle there. I just like the look of it, and also whenever there's a lot of bulk with the cork, it just makes it easier to sew instead of trying to push out and have a nice corner. Again, lazy seamstress here, so a lot of my stuff has those corners. Okay, so now that I've got it all finger pressed, I'm going to start on the outside and I'm going to top stitch all the way around. I'm going to be using 1/8 of an inch on this. Lost bobbin roulette. All right, so I'm going to rewind bobbin, be right back. So while my bobbin was being made, I was checking out my stitches, and I noticed on the contrast back that my threads were looping really badly. So I tried to redo it a couple times while before I got back on the video, and it wasn't working, but I thought that I would show you before I shared what fixed it. If this will focus, you can see how the thread is looping. And the reason it's doing it on the front now is because I was sewing from the green side when I was trying to fix it and whatever, blah, blah, blah. So a quick online search told me that when the upper tension is too loose, you get looping on the bobbin. So I went ahead and tightened my upper tension to 3, and I was able to successfully complete this side corner piece. So I'm going to try with this one now. I tend to run into this problem when I'm sewing over bulky corners and I have to lift the presser foot and pivot the work. And I would say with 100% guarantee that it always happens whenever I'm making the Glenda flap. It's super annoying, very frustrating, but hopefully I just solved it by tightening my upper tension. This is the true test now. Oh, it didn't work. So you can see right here, it's just being super funky. All right, I gotta mess with this. That was thoroughly annoying, but I did get there in the end, and I got both corners done nicely. I ended up having to decrease my presser foot tension. It's 1, 2, 3. It's on the 3rd little knot, and then I increased my upper tension. But yeah, that was super annoying. Hopefully that solves the problem. Now I'm going to sew my tag down onto the main body panel. All right, so I've got that on. I'm going to match up the bottom of both of my main body panel. Put a clip, and then I'm gonna sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance across the whole bottom. Now I'm going to finger press it toward the back, the whole, both pieces. I'm going to lay towards what will be the back of the purse, and the back for me is the part that has the tag. And then I'm going to top stitch this down with a really close 1/8. Some might call it a 16th seam allowance. Alright, so we've got the main panel, we've got the flap done, and now I just need to, I'm going to top stitch my zipper tabs down. Okay, and oh yes, my side panels that I folded, I'm going to sew this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance as well. And you'll see, makes it have a nice little fold there. There we go. So we've got the majority of our prep done, and yeah, let's keep it moving. All right, so we've got a lot of the prep work done. We have the main body panel sewn together, and we have the 2 side panels. So while I'm here, I might as well just go ahead and do this. But what I'm going to do is just snip around this curved edge on both sides. About a 1/4 inch snips. No real rhyme or reason as far as spacing. I just want to be able to ease this curve into this main body panel here. And so what I'm going to do is just fold this seam allowance here just to one side, and then I'm going to push this seam allowance from the side edge or side panel onto this seam allowance from the main body until they match. I'll clip that into place. And then I'm just going to slowly work my way up and around and ease the side panel in. And don't be afraid to kind of manhandle the cork. You are stronger than the cork. I'm just full of bad jokes tonight. All right, so you can see I got one side done. Now I just kind of like roll it up and over. Again, just use your thumb. It's kind of the perfect easing in tool. Just lay your thumb into the crease, or the crease that you create, lay your thumb and flip. Or, gosh, I'm doing a bad job of explaining this tonight, but when you're on the curve, what you do is I lay my thumb right on the curve like this, and then I just roll it up and roll it over, if that makes any sense. I'm sorry, my words are not working. And then a lot of times when I get to the top of this, if you can see my corners or my side panels, it doesn't quite match up, which I'm not super concerned, but I want them to be even. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this side up and then just go back down and around and ease the pieces together again. That didn't take much at all. So then when I get it like this, what I like to do is put some glue on it, because it keeps everything in place. Because when you're trying to sew around this curve, this side panel can shift a lot. So I like to, since I have it, put glue around what will be inside the seam allowance. And so I start at the bottom here. And then I just do the same thing, but with glue. And then I just start to move my clips around. So I'm going to go down this side here. And you just want to be careful that you keep it in the seam allowance Otherwise, when the bag is done and it's flipped, you're going to see the glue, the shiny glue, and you don't want that. And so when you start to push the side panel into this main panel here, you'll notice that it creates kind of like a shelf all the way around, and that's what you want. That's what's going to make it easy to sew, and that's just what defines the bag. That's what defines the shape. It becomes this barrel shape here. So don't be afraid to really manipulate and move the cork around. So I've got that side, so I'm going to start pulling this side off, put some glue on it. And it might be easier too, now that I'm doing this might make it easier. When you're pinning or gluing, or not pinning, but clipping, if you grab it and you flatten the side panel out, it makes it a little bit easier to ease and match those edges. And then you can roll it back in so that the shelf is created on the inside of the panel instead of on this. Because the bag, you don't want it to fold out this way, you want it to fold the side panel. Alright, so I'm going to let this glue set up and dry for a couple of minutes while I get the zip pouch ready to go. So I top stitched my ends, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the top, or this zip tab end up, and then I'm going to trim my zipper underneath, leaving about a ½ inch under there. I'm going to close my zipper, and then I'm going to burn this underside of this top edge that I'm going to glue down, because I'm going to glue it raw edge. I'm not going to flip it. So I'm just going to put some glue here. And then I'm just going to glue it down. You want to make sure that your zipper is straight and that all of your edges meet up. And you have some time to manipulate before the glue sets up totally. So don't freak out. Take your time and just make sure that your zipper is nice and straight. And I'm gonna go ahead and do this side as well. I know a lot of people don't like to put their tags on the outside of bags, so this would be a good place to do it too if you are one of those people. I personally like to put mine on the outside of bags because it is free advertising when people are walking around. And I think that when people are buying those super duper expensive $1,000 bags, they're basically buying the label. So I'm just gonna like fake it till I make it. And so I put mine on the outside. Not that you asked or care, but that's what I'm gonna do. So while this is setting up, I'm gonna flip it. And I'm going to glue down just one side of my cotton. And this, I glue, I'll show you. So I'm going to lay on the opposite edge here, right side down on the zipper. And then when I top stitch this side on the zipper, it's gonna catch this cotton, and then I'm just gonna flip it and I'm not going to top stitch on the inside of the cotton. If you follow any of my other projects, then you know that I do not top stitch my lining, and so this is no different. All right, so I'm going to do these one at a time so that I ensure that I don't sew down my cotton. So I'm going to move back over to the machine and get this top stitch and get this side sewed in. Okay, so when I'm going to sew this side panel, I'm going to have the side panel facing up. So I apologize if the camera gets blocked at all. I'm going to sew it at 1/4 inch, or maybe just slightly larger than 1/4 inch, just to ensure that I cover up all the glue that I put here. And then whenever you're sewing this curve, you just want to make sure that you're flipping it. And you can lift your presser foot and move it around. You just want to make sure that you're not creating a fold in the bottom of the main panel. What it'll look like. So there we go. Whoops. They're all sewn together now. This is kind of what it will look like when it's all done. Anyways, whatever. So now what I'm going to do is I have my zipper here, my zipper compartment. And I'm only going to sew down this side of my zipper because this is where I have my cotton on that side. So from the top side, from the cork side, I'm going to sew down just the right side of my zipper. And don't follow the fact that I'm doing it on the right. I'm only doing it on the right because that's how my cotton is placed. So, okay, now you can see, so I was able to catch this cotton in my seam allowance, or my top stitching of the top up here. So what I'm going to do is just fold this down, and then it creates a nice flush edge here, and I don't have to worry about having wonky top stitching on the inside. So since I'm already over here, I'm just going to grab my glue. What I like to do here is just glue, do a quick layer of glue just to keep this cotton in place. And because I didn't iron, because I don't usually ever iron, you just kind of hand iron it. Then when you hand iron it and glue it, look how nice it looks. Never know. Okay, so now I'm going to put glue on this other side of my zipper tape. And glue this right side down. And then we'll top stitch the other side of the zipper and do the same thing, glue it down. To iron. Dun, dun, dun. So I'm just going to trim this rogue thread here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold this top piece down and pin this together. Now what I'm going to do is just sew all the way around this to create one compartment. I'm going to do it at an 1/8 inch. Except along the bottom I'm going to do it at 1/4 because I noticed that my cotton was a little shy of the end. Okay, so I have my completed zipper pouch here. Let's see, when you unzip it, everything is really nice and enclosed down there. And because the cotton, I sewed around the cotton, so it's never going to have raw edges on the inside. And now I'm just going to trim all of this down. So that all of my edges are nice and pretty, not fraying at all. And then at the end of the bag, when we put this in the middle, these edges are going to all be pressed up against the inside of the bag. So I'm not worried about this fraying at all. But if you are, then you can hit this with some glue real quick just to seal these edges. Or a lot of times I do pinking shears as well. Okay, so now we just have to get this other side panel sewn into place. So I'm going to grab it, just like before. I'm going to fold it. This time I'm going to fold it the opposite direction because now my main body panel seam allowance is going this way. So I want my side panel to go that way. And I'm just going to seat these right next to each other. Oh, wait, I got to put my little snips in. If you're having trouble getting all of these edges to line up, just keep trying. I've made so many of these, and I've made them out of Cork, so this is kind of just muscle memory for me. But it took me a long time to figure out where to push and where to pull and all of that, so just keep trying. But I know that whenever you watch videos, a lot of times you're like, wow, they make it look so easy. And it's not that it's easy, it's just that I've already learned how to do it. And you can too, but it just takes practice. So, ease this back in. All right, so my edges, they have a little bit of overhang on top here, but again, I'm not concerned with it because this side does too. Oh, kind of, it fixed it when I sewed it, but it's not a big deal. It's not gonna make a difference. So now that I've got it all clipped, I'm gonna go back and add my glue here. This was a trick that I just really started doing the last few that I've made. This makes it so much easier because a lot of times whenever you're twisting and pulling and pushing on it, when it's under your, when it's being sewn, you know, it's under the foot and the needle is going, it can get a little dicey. And I've gotten some really wonky edges in the past, but the glue just really helps it stay put, which, what do you know? Glue it's doing his job. See, so you can see it already started shifting and moving around on me. So I'm just going to remove that clip and then just push it back into where it needs to go. Okay, so while this glue is settling, I am going to get the lining ready to go. So I've got my 2 lining main pieces. I'm going to lay them right sides together. The longer, the wider edge is what we're going to sew together. Clip this into place. And then I'll go ahead and prep my strap at the same time. So I'm just going to sew my 2 pieces together on the short edge first. All right, so I'm still going to let that glue on the main body set up, and I'll finish this or get this going. So because this is a lining, we are going to birth the bag through this section. So I'm just going to sew. I'm going to sew with a bigger seam allowance up here. So I did a 1/4 inch on the outside. So I'm going to do probably around a 1/2 inch here. And I'm only going to sew in a few inches, and then I'm going to sew down and create the L or the 7 like I've talked about in my last videos. And then I'm going to skip all this section, and then I'm going to do the same thing down here. So in at an L and down. And when I'm creating this L, I backstitch super well on both this part where I'm coming down and this part where I sew out, because this is going to be super stretched and it's going to have a lot of tension whenever I'm flipping the bag. All right, so I'll just go ahead and toss these together while I'm over here. The cotton side panels, we need to fold in half and do the same stitch like the outer ones had. They had that little triangle cut out, the tall triangle, and that's what makes it do the pooch thing, which is kind of hard to tell because it's all cotton and there's no interfacing, but do the same thing like the outside. And then I'm going to do the same thing as whenever I seated. I'm going to fold my seam allowance to one side and seat it against this other seam allowance, matching the seams. I'm just going to start pinning. And then I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to ease it in and work around this curve. Cotton without interfacing is quite a bit easier to work with because it's so flimsy. So you can make it do whatever you want. So you'll notice that I didn't do the little cuts, but if you want to, you can add the cuts. It makes the folding look a little bit nicer, but that's all going to be tucked inside after it's constructed. And so because my seam allowances were different, you'll notice that I have a little bit more overhang on this one. At the top, it's kind of hard to tell because it's cotton and same color, but you can probably see better there. So I've got that overhang. But again, I'm not going to worry about that. And I'm just going to sew it the same way that I did the outside. And I'm going to start at a 1/4 inch seam allowance up here, just like I did on the main. And then I'm going to ease it into a 1/2 inch down and around the curve, and then back out to a 1/4 inch because I want my lining to be the same width as my outer whenever I put them all together. The cotton will stretch a little bit, so you've got a little bit of leeway on that too. I'm just gonna go ahead and do this other one because I'm already working on this. Sorry, I know this video is like all over the place. Whenever I make Glendas, I just do them. I do everything in the batch because it all, I don't know, just the way that I make them. The strap is generally the last thing. Get this one sewn in. Okie dokie. So now that's our lining. That's how easy that is to come together. Okay, so this glue on the main panel, I'm sure is set by now. I'm gonna go ahead and get this sewn in. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to trim down my seam allowances on the outside. I'm going to use pinking shears for that, just so that when the bag is flipped out, the pinking shear cuts will let this curve nest into itself nicely. It's kind of the same idea of why I cut the little snips into the corners, because it just allows the material to lay against each other without having the bulk. Cutting with pinking shears kills my hands, my wrists. All right, okay, I'm gonna trim down the seam allowances on this as well. All right, and then since I have so much overhang on some of this, I'm going to stretch it like so, matching up the seams. And then I'm just gonna trim it to where it all is the same edge. So before I start to assemble it, I need to baste my flap into or onto my main body panel. And you're going to do that, the side that you have your tag or the side that does not have the snap. See, there's the snap. So I want that to be on the opposite side. So turn it so the snap is facing me now. And with the flap side snap facing me as well, I'm going to line the flap up along the back edge. Just kind of eyeball it, center it, and then pin it into place. And then I left a little bit of overhang on mine because I had a little bit of overhang from attaching my side panels. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pop over the machine real quick and just base stitch this down. Alrighty, so I got the flap in there, top stitched or basted, whatever you want to call it. I've got it sewn down. And now what I'm going to do is take my lining and I'm going to lay it inside of the bag, making sure that the right sides are together. And then I'm just going to work my way around, clipping and aligning all 4 of these seams, the curved seams here, and easing it all in together. Because I don't have my cotton interfaced in here, I want to sew with the cork side up. So I'm going to remove my sewing table, and that will allow me to slide my bag underneath the sewing machine as I sew around. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to start on one of my side panels here and just sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And this is another part of the bag process that you can't be scared to just mush the cork around.
To backstitch really well when I'm sewing over my flap here.
Just want to be careful of your lining on the inside, make sure it doesn't fall, or else you'll sew over it twice, and that's a train wreck waiting to happen. Whenever I get to these long straight edges, I like to straighten my work out as much as possible, because then that allows me to just sew in one straight shot instead of taking breaks, because that's when the presser foot can move and lose the tension, and then you can get a really wonky seam. So I like to just hold it as straight as possible and keep everything moving.
Even if you just have to slow down, keep it moving. I'm going to have to stop up here, sure.
Now we have the fun part, get to flip it all right side out. I didn't even worry about trimming down my seam allowance on that edge that I just sewed down, because it will help me create a nice edge to top stitch after I get it all turned. This is always the best part of bag making, when you get to see it making progress and then you can see the finish line. So exciting. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to roll this down my seams and finger press and pin as I go along. When I get here, you have to lay the flap up, and then you can tuck everything and finger press, and then I just pin it right here, right next to the flap, since you can't pin all the way around, or clip, excuse me. Just assume I mean clip if I say pin. Been sewing for a long time. Clips are, in the scheme of things, one of the newer tools that I've started using. And so just to make sure that my fabric doesn't shift in here whenever I'm top stitching, because I'm going to be top stitching from the outside here, I am going to pull this lining out, and I'm going to just put some glue here on both sides of the seam and then let that set up so that it just doesn't, I can just be more assured that I'll catch everything in my top stitch. I'm also going to use a wider top stitch than I normally would, just to be sure that I catch a nice straight seam on my lining, because this is not the technique that I like to use. I don't like to top stitch the lining, but sometimes you can't get around it. So I just threw some glue on the other side of the cork, and then I'm just going to throw some glue on this side of the fabric so that it stays put as well. I know you probably can't see too much, but sorry. So essentially I just put glue all along the inside of this top edge here, and I'm just going to let it set, and then you can see it's already looks nicer. It's like laying a lot nicer already, and it just is more of a security to make sure that my stitches out here catch my stitches in here. So the next step is to move back over the machine, and then I'm just going to top stitch around the entire top of the bag. So when you're sewing from the back side over the curved top and back onto the front, The work will have a tendency to try to come up at like a point, like these pieces will try to angle down the front and back. And so in order to keep your stitch line straight, what you want to do is just really work it to where this side, the top that you're top stitching, is straight as possible. Otherwise, your stitches on the inside are going to get all wonky and they're going to start jumping around. And so it's important to, when you're about to switch from one section to the next, to get this top stitch line as straight as possible. So you can see here where it's trying to kick up on me and trying to get all crazy. And so you just have to finagle it to where it's laying flat. And this flap can get in the way too, so you just have to watch what you're doing, go slow, and make sure everything is in a nice straight line. So here we go. You can see my top stitch line is nice and straight in there. And then around the sides, across the front. All right, so let's finish this bad boy up. We're getting close. All right, so since everything is all top stitched now, I went ahead and trimmed my threads. And the next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this lining back out, tuck any rogue threads in. And because I sewed that little L whenever I was creating the lining, what it does is it creates a nice, simple fold on its own. When you do that, when you pull it taut, you can see, when you pull it taut, it folds itself in. It folds itself in nicely and creates a folded inner edge for you. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to pin it in place, or clip it, whatever. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the flap down, lining side up with my clips up here. I'm going to grab this zipper pouch that I made earlier, and with the zipper head on the left side of my work, I am going to lay the raw bottom edge along the same seam that I'm about to make down here. And you want to center it. And then I'm just going to clip it into place, lining up the bottom edge of the cotton with the bottom edge of the zipper pouch. And so you can see here, they're flush on both sides. And so, in one fell swoop, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew this zipper pouch into the lining of the bag at the same time that I close up this lining hole here. Does anybody else have a critter that will never get out of their way? They know exactly where to sit so that they get some attention. This is Sal. You say hi, Sal, Sal. He said he just wants to look out the window. All right, so with, again, my cork side up, I'm just going to sew all of this together, and I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Well, actually 1/8 of an inch. And I like to throw some stay stitches in every so often because we are sewing together that lining, the birthing hole as well. I'm gonna trim my threads here. So now the bag looks like this. We have the outside of the bag, the lining of the bag, which is now attached to the zipper pocket. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tuck the lining back inside, and you'll see the zipper pocket is now running down the center of it. Kind of tuck the edges, the side corners in nice as you can. And what we're gonna do is rivet everything all together now. So the first thing that I like to do is lay my lay the bag together, squish it down, lining up this side seam with this bottom side seam. And then I'm gonna clip this center line here. You wanna reach in, tuck in your lining so that it all gets taken together. And then, before I actually move forward, I'm going to make some holes here, or some dots here, because I'm gonna be punching holes here in a second. See that one? So I've got my holes marked. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick up the bag and try, okay. And then while maintaining this fold here, I'm gonna take this zipper pocket and push it all the way to meet up into this crease over here. And you wanna make sure that it's nice and flat on the top, that's not at a curve, because the natural, you can see how it's trying to push up and out, and I wanna make sure that it's straight in here. So I'm just gonna wiggle this all around until I can feel the zipper pocket on the inside of this fold. Clip it back into place. And I'm gonna punch holes where I marked. And put some rivets in. Get my handy dandy rivet press here and press these in. So now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side to get this zipper pocket settled. So I'm going to match up my side seams. Here it is. I'm going to reach in and make sure that my cotton is nice and flush in there. And this step can feel so weird, so if it's not just you. Mark my dots here. And so this, pulling all of this over to this other side can be kind of a pain, but again, just go slowly. And remind yourself that you're stronger than the cork. And then you can see it's looking all super weird, but we'll fix that. Another thing that you want to pay attention to is the depth at which you have your zipper pocket down from the sides here. So that looks good for me. I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to poke my holes and then rivet. Some of these, gosh, if you've been watching any of my videos, you know like how I struggle. I don't know what is going on with these rivets, but some of the caps don't fit. The posts, I don't know if I mixed up 2 batches or what, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. And my fingers are too big. It's like sausage fingers. I don't know what's going on with that. Yes. If you work with rivets a lot and you don't have a rivet press, I highly suggest it. I used to spend so much time trying to hammer my rivets in, and I'd bend them all the time. It was such a pain in the butt, but my rivet press has really changed the game for me. I'm not sponsored in any way by Gold Star. I wish I was. That would be amazing. But I just suggest the rivet press from anywhere. All right, so you can kind of see it's really starting to look like it's going to in the end. And now what I haven't covered yet is the strap anchors. So on my bags, I don't put them out the backside like the original pattern calls for. I rivet it into the back side seam on this one and then the front side seam on this one. So because I haven't made my strap anchors yet, I'm only going to do the opposite edges with my rivets so far, or right now. So I'm doing the top left or front left. I'm just going to fold this in half, push everything all together inside so it's nice and neat, clip it into place. I'm going to mark my line or my hole markation. Now I'm going to go to the opposite, back right. Grab this clip. Alrighty, so next what I need to do is make my strap anchors. The pattern calls for 1-inch strap D-rings, but I'm just going to use these guys. I think they're 5/8. Yeah. So it's up to you what you use. This is just what I have on hand that matches. So what I'm going to do is cut some strap anchors out of this, or maybe this. Yeah, this one. And And I'm going to make them 5/8 by 1.5 inches long. And then I'm just gonna, I'm gonna burn the edges. My kitty's back over there. Kitty, Sal. I'm just gonna put some glue on one side and then just put the D-rings in. Pretty straightforward. And then when the strap anchors are only 1.5, what that does is it allows it to sit inside of the fold, which you'll see in a minute, nicely enough to where if the person didn't want to have the strap connected to the bag, they could flip the D-ring in and it will not stick out. That's kind of one of my things about sewing bags is when people say that they're convertible to clutches and then there's those D-rings sticking out. I just prefer not to have that, so this is just what I do. Feel free to interpret my interpretation however you'd like. And then because I always do everything with a slight angle, I like to add just a little tiny edge here. You can, oh, there you go. And then I'm just going to poke a hole right in the middle of this. I'm just going to eyeball it. Doesn't have to be that serious. And this is why I love Beacon Fabri-Tac. You saw that I just glued this and it's already workable and dried enough to where I can keep moving forward. But long drying glue, whew, drive me up the wall. All right, so I've got my bag back and I'm going to start back here on this back side. I'm going to do the same thing that I've been doing, make sure everything's nice in that fold. I'm going to clip it down here. I'm going to mark my spot where I'm going to put my strap holder. Then I'm going to punch it in. So I grab a rivet, and this time is the only time that I really pay attention to which way I put the rivet in, but I put the post in so it's coming up towards the middle. Grab one of my strap anchors, put that on top. Of course, I'm going to grab one that's going to be one of the weird ones, because why wouldn't I? Let's see. It's the post or the head? The post. I'm just gonna rivet this in place. Simple. Now go to the front left, or front right rather. So on this one, that's right, I'm going to feed the rivet in from the top so that the post comes towards the middle so that I can attach my strap anchor. So then I just like to kind of straighten everything out. I roll the edges of the cork between my fingers to get the seam all the way out. Just kind of mold it how I want it to be. And there we go, we've got one outside of a Glenda. And then so, again, what I was saying is whenever you don't want the strap, you can just flip the D-ring in, and then you can't see it. And it makes it, I just think it's nicer. This one has a little bit of glue on it, but there we go. See, so when it's flipped in, it's just not sticking out like a Mickey Mouse ear, as opposed to looking like that. All right, so last thing that we have to do is make the strap. And this I am going to keep at 1 inch wide because I just like a stronger strap. This is a pretty big bag if you look at it. Let's see, so just like here, it's a little over 12 inches wide by 7 inches tall. So this is a big girl. It does work as an evening clutch, which is nice, because it's, you know, I don't know, it's just enough space. But it is, I think, on the larger side. I also like to give these to people who have babies because diapers and wipes fit perfectly in here. And then all the mom stuff can go in here in the inside pocket. I think these bags are quite versatile. They're a nice diaper bag, day trip diaper bag. Okay, let's get that out of the way. So now my strap, what I'm going to do is I have my 2 pieces here and I've got them clipped and I just need to sew across this section here. And then I didn't cut my top strip, so whenever I turn off the video, I'm going to do that as well. All right, so I've got my, my straps connected, and what I did is I folded them together and then I butterflied it open and sewed down each side. And for my accent color, I just sewed it together. I didn't butterfly it open. So now for the part that hurts my elbows, let's get this going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it wrong side up, and then I'm going to fold it to where my edges meet in the middle, and then I just bobby pin. And then while I'm doing that, I'm going to lay my accent strip in the center on top of that seam and pin it into place as well. And Salvador's here to help. Hi, Sal. All right, so I have clipped my corners here like I always do. Now I just need to make the strap adjustable. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to put one end of my strap up and over the middle bar. And I'm going to punch a hole right in the middle. I'm actually going to do 2 holes. Then I'm going to go to the other end of my strap. I'm going to feed my lobster clasp in right side up. Come back around. I'm going to loop through. So up and over what I've just riveted into place. And you'll see it creates a loop for this clasp. And then I'm just going to attach the other clasp on this side. First, I'm going to mark some holes here, though, so that they're nice and straight. Now we just push everything out of the way. Be sure to push your trash onto the floor, or maybe not. Do as I say, not as I do, maybe. Maybe don't, whatever. Do whatever you want to do. Then you attach to your strap. And we've got ourselves a Glenda crossbody that is also convertible into a clutch. Yeah, I've already given you the tour, but see, now you can see like where it, the straps come off the back and then the front on this side. It evenly distributes the weight, I've found, and as long as you have nice strong hardware here, it shouldn't be an issue. I have had some hardware break, but that was because the supplier that I got it from, it just wasn't quality. But this stuff is nice and thick and pretty, and I have no question that it will hold. Well, all right, everybody, that wraps up making the Swoon Patterns Glenda bag. Be sure to let me know what you think in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, all of that fun stuff. Watch my other videos. I'll post another video around here of my All Cork Necessary Clutch Wallet. That pattern is by Emmeline Bags. And I guess that's it for now. Thanks for joining me. Have a wonderful day or night, evening, whatever, wherever you are, and hope to see you soon.